The forest did not welcome her. It tore at her, as if the trees themselves had decided she had run far enough. Branches whipped across Alara Miles' face, slicing open thin lines that stung sharply as cold rain trickled into them. Her breath broke in uneven gasps, each one scraping her throat raw. She ran anyway. She had no choice. The world behind her had already decided she wasn't meant to survive the night. Moonlight spilled between skeletal branches, thin, pale, unsteady, like the moon itself was shivering at what chased her. Wet leaves slapped against her ankles. The earth sucked at her feet with every step, muddy and unforgiving. Her lungs burned, her arms trembled, and the wound on her bicep throbbed with every heartbeat. She pressed her hand against it, and beneath her fingers, something glowed, faint, silver, alive. She didn't dare look at it. She knew what that glow meant, and she knew she had never been able to control it. Icy wind sliced through her soaked clothes, biting straight into her bones. Rain hammered her from above, sharp, relentless, cold enough to feel personal. As if the storm wasn't just passing through the forest, but punishing her, mirroring every bruise she carried long before tonight. But she kept running. She had been running her whole life. And the worst part? There was no one on this earth who would miss her if she didn't make it out. Behind her, the shadows moved with purpose. Not the soft, natural sway of trees, but something heavier, faster, more intelligent. She could hear the grunt of paws digging into wet earth, the low, hungry vibration of a snarl. Wolves, massive, trained, and merciless. Closing in, she stumbled over a fallen branch, nearly collapsing. Pain jolted up her leg, but she caught herself with one hand against the cold trunk of an oak. Her palm sparked, an involuntary flicker of silver light glowing against the bark. "Not now," she whispered, breathless, shaking. "Please, not now." The light died immediately, swallowed by the dark. But the forest had seen it, and so had whatever followed her. A growl rolled across the clearing, low, deep, commanding. Not the growl of a wolf simply hunting. No, that was the sound of something meant to chase her, something that knew her scent too well, something that had been promised her blood. She pushed off the tree and forced her legs to move again. Alara no longer felt the cold. She barely felt her feet. All she felt was fear, pressing in tight against her ribs, squeezing, drowning her until even breathing hurt. She tasted metal on her tongue, panic, salt, rain. Her hair clung to her cheeks, soaked through. Her vision blurred, trees stretched into streaks of dark as she sprinted through them. But she couldn't stop. Not now. Not after everything she had already lost tonight. Her thoughts flickered in sharp, painful fragments, splintering like glass in her mind. Why did she choose her? Why wasn't I enough? Why does fate hate me so much? She tried to shove the memories away before they could overtake her. But memories were faster than wolves. She saw her sister's face, Seraphina, beautiful as always, luminous under the ritual torches. She saw the way the pack had looked at her, their whispers like needles piercing her skin. She saw the Alpha King's eyes, cold, unreadable, when her name slipped into the conversation. She saw the pity, the annoyance, the disappointment, like she wasn't even worth hiding. Then she saw it, the rejection. Not dramatic, not loud, just a simple turn of a head, a quiet dismissal, a silent confirmation of every fear she'd carried since childhood. "You're the wrong sister. You always were. Her breath hitched painfully. A branch cracked behind her. Too close. Too heavy. She pushed harder. Her foot slid in the mud, and suddenly, gravity ripped her downward. The world tilted. The ground disappeared from beneath her feet. She fell, tumbling down a ravine. Rocks and tree roots slammed into her body. Her shoulder hit something hard. White-hot pain exploded across her arm, and then she landed face first in cold, soupy mud. For a moment, she couldn't move. The fall knocked the air from her lungs. She lay there, sprawled, soaked, shaking, mud seeping into her palms, her hair plastered across her cheek, her wounded arm pulsing with agony. Rain fell harder now, as if the sky had finally broken. Alara pushed up onto her elbows, coughing, her whole body trembling with effort. Mud dripped down her chin, slick and cold. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing dirt further. Her vision wavered. The trees above her were a blur of twisting black shapes, but the glowing wound on her arm, that was clear, too clear. Silver shimmered beneath torn skin, pulsing faintly in rhythm with her heartbeat. Not bright enough for the world to see, but bright enough for her to understand. It was waking up. "No, not now," she whispered again, voice cracking. Her palms began to spark, this time without her touching anything. Tiny threads of silver energy drifted between her fingers, like smoke made of light. She clenched her fists immediately, forcing the sparks back into her skin. Her heart pounded. She knew what would happen if she lost control out here. Surrounded by darkness and soaking fear, she had seen what her power could do when she was 8 years old. She had never forgotten the screaming, the fire, the impossible heat. She would rather die than lose control again. The rain hissed as it hit the dirt around her. Water trickled down her back. The cold tore into her bones, but it didn't stop the shaking in her hands. The shaking that had nothing to do with the temperature. Another growl echoed from somewhere above the ravine. Closer, hungrier. Her body froze. Mud squelched softly behind her, something heavy shifting its weight. Alara forced her head to turn. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard it hurt. There, just beyond the fallen branches, 2 golden eyes stared down at her from the ridge. Eye level, unblinking, predator sharp, patient. The beast was not rushing. It was watching her fall apart, as if it wanted to savor the moment she realized she couldn't escape. Alara's breath stuttered. Her fingers dug into the mud, cold and trembling. She pushed herself backward, dragging her body away from those glowing eyes. Her legs didn't want to move. They felt numb, heavy, almost foreign, but she forced them to respond. She crawled, each movement slow and desperate, her arms shaking under her weight. A snap of a twig echoed behind her, then another, and another, more footsteps. More shadows, moving in unison. The wolves had found a second way down. Alara's pulse pounded in her ears, drowning out the storm. She could hear her heartbeat faster than she could hear her breathing. Her chest clenched like something sharp was lodged inside it. She tried to stand. Her injured leg buckled under her, and she nearly fell again. Pain ripped up her thigh, but she grabbed a tree root and used it to haul herself upright. Her teeth clenched so tightly she tasted blood. She swayed. Everything felt distant. Her body felt too small to contain the terror filling it. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the ravine for a split second. The wolves surrounding her were enormous. Muscle, fur, gleaming eyes. Their teeth flashed white. Their breath fogged in the cold night air. Every one of them was trained to obey a single command. Don't let her escape. Alara stumbled backward until her spine hit the rough bark of a tree. She pressed herself against it, chest heaving, arms shaking. Her palms flickered again, silver sparks leaking through her fingers. "No," she whispered, panicked. "Stop. Please stop." But her power didn't listen. It never had. Her fear fed it. Her pain awakened it. Her heartbreak made it hunger. The wolves stepped closer, their paws silent on the wet earth. She breathed in sharply. Her vision dimmed around the edges. Then, from the farthest corner of the darkness, something else moved. Not a wolf, not a hunter. Something larger, something ancient. A snarl cut across the night, deeper, rougher, not like the others. A sound that made the ravine itself tremble. Alara's breath caught in her throat. She knew that sound, even though she had never heard it this close before. The primal presence stepped into view, its shadow stretching across the mud. Massive, predatory, radiating dominance so intense the other wolves lowered their heads. Rain pooled around its paws. Thunder rolled behind it like an introduction, and Alara, broken, shaking, terrified, felt her body respond with something horrifying. Recognition, the kind that lived deeper than her consciousness, deeper than memory, deeper than fear. She tried to crawl away again, legs trembling violently beneath her. Mud soaked through her palms as she dragged herself backward. Her breath hitched, her eyes blurred with tears. But her body was done running. Exhaustion pressed down on her like a boulder. Her limbs gave out. She collapsed onto her elbows, unable to lift herself anymore. Her heart thundered. Her skin prickled. Her power pulsed, begging to be freed. She pressed her forehead to the cold mud. One trembling whisper escaped her lips. "Please, not like this." The growl rose again. Closer now. Heavy steps splashed through the mud toward her. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the moment the darkness finally reached her. Before we uncover who hunts her, and why fate has chosen this exact moment to unravel everything she thought she knew about her past, her destiny, and the power she never wanted, take a breath. And if you're new here, subscribe to Velvet Romance Library, because here, every tale pulls you deeper into worlds of desire, danger, and destiny. The voice lingered like a hand reaching through the storm. Then, the darkness moved closer, and the story truly began. The forest seemed to shudder at the sound of the next growl. Not the shallow, hungry snarl of wolves, but a sound that rattled the very air. A rumble that made the rain feel heavier, more insistent, like the world itself was bracing for what had arrived. And then, lightning split the sky, bright and jagged, illuminating the dark shapes moving through the trees. There, stepping into the clearing, like he had been carved from shadow itself, was a black wolf, massive, broader than any she had ever seen. Its fur slick with rain, eyes burning a bronze fire that made her stomach twist. The ground seemed to bend beneath it, the air trembling with its presence. Her breath hitched, heart hammering against her ribs. She pressed herself lower into the mud, desperate to vanish. And then it happened, the impossible. The wolf shifted, muscles bunching, fur melting into human form in a fluid, terrifying, beautiful motion. He emerged from the forest as a man, and yet not just a man. There was something more, something primal, something that radiated authority so completely that even the pursuing wolves flinched in deference, their growls dropping to low, uncertain murmurs. Lysander Vale. The name was a storm all on its own, though she didn't know it yet. Shirtless, drenched by the rain, his chest taut and glistening with water, his eyes burning like molten bronze fire. His hair was damp and dark, plastered against a face chiseled with a dangerous calm, and every inch of him screamed power, danger, and dominance, the kind of dominance that demanded obedience, whether you wanted to give it or not. And then he saw her. "Elara Miles, you shouldn't be here." His voice was low, almost a growl, but each word cut through the chaos, through the storm, through the fear, clawing at her chest. She froze, mid-shudder, every muscle locked in shock. How did he know her name? How did he sound, as if he had been waiting for this moment her entire life? Her body refused to move. Her mind scrambled, each thought colliding with the next, sharp and frantic. Who is this man? Why do I feel like I've been running my whole life only to land right in his presence? The wolves hesitated, flicking their ears toward him. He didn't speak another word. He didn't need to. With a subtle tilt of his head, a mere shift of posture, the massive predators obeyed, dropping their shoulders, lowering their heads, stepping aside as though he were the gravity, keeping the forest from spinning apart. Elara's knees threatened to buckle beneath her. Relief battled with terror, and she couldn't tell which was stronger. She'd expected death, expected claws, teeth, the snap of bone, but not this. Not a savior so terrifyingly perfect. It made her want to cry, to scream, to run, and yet to collapse into him all at once. And then he was close, too close. Her senses screamed at her to recoil, but her body betrayed her. Her gaze met his, and the world narrowed into the molten fire of his eyes, bronze and gold and something darker, ancient and consuming. She flinched as his hand hovered near her shoulder, hesitant, cautious, almost painfully aware of her fragility. He froze as well, as if her flinch had wounded him, had stabbed straight into the unspoken part of him that needed her to trust, even if she never could. And that was the strangest thing. She wanted to trust him, against every instinct, against every memory of betrayal, against every reason she had for running. She wanted to believe he wouldn't hurt her, but her muscles remained tight, her breaths jagged, her hands twitching with the urge to shove him away before he could reach closer. He didn't touch her, not yet. His presence was enough to make her skin feel alive, to make her blood thrumming in panic, to make her remember that there was a part of her that wanted someone to see her. Finally, even if the world had spent her life pretending she didn't exist. "I thought you were the other sister," he murmured, his voice now low, almost a whisper, over the rain and the storm. Yet it landed in her chest like a physical blow. Every nerve in her body tightened. The words were sharp, jagged, and strange. Half accusation, half confession, half desire. She blinked, not sure she had heard him right. The other sister? He meant Seraphina. Of course he meant Seraphina. The one he was supposed to love, the one everyone had always whispered about, the golden queen of the pack. And yet, those words didn't hurt the way she expected. They stirred something different, a strange, frightening spark deep in her chest. Relief, recognition, validation, something she had never allowed herself to feel. That maybe, somehow, she was seen. That maybe, somehow, she wasn't the mistake the world insisted she was. Her palms tingled. The familiar, unwanted pulse of silver fire trying to escape again. She clenched them into fists to stop it, the tiny sparks fading back beneath her skin. Her fear roared, reminding her that losing control here would mean everything. The storm, the wolves, the darkness would consume her. She had never allowed herself to let her power run free, and she wouldn't start tonight. The storm raged around them, but for a moment, it felt like time slowed. Her ears caught only the rhythmic pounding of her heart, the low, vibrating presence of him beside her, and the cautious breathing of the wolves that now waited, unwilling to move without him. The world had shrunk to bronze eyes, wet hair plastered across a chiseled face, and the impossible pull she could not name. Alara's throat felt dry. She wanted to speak, to ask him who he was, why he was here, why the forest obeyed him, like he was the heartbeat of it. But the words stuck, tangled with panic and disbelief. He stepped closer, just one deliberate step. And though his feet were wet and caked in mud, the ground seemed to smooth under him, as if reality itself bent to his will. She wanted to look away, wanted to flee, but her body refused. Every instinct screamed. Every fear clawed. Every memory of rejection pressed down. But she was rooted, caught between terror and an inexplicable longing. "Do you trust me?" His words were soft, almost gentle, yet they carried weight, the kind of weight that broke bones and hearts all at once. She wanted to answer. She wanted to say yes, even as every part of her screamed no. I, she tried, voice cracking, but it caught in her throat. He tilted his head, watching her, studying her as though he could peel away every layer of mud, blood, fear, and shame to see the girl underneath, and maybe he could. "Listen," he said, now firmer, commanding, and the wolves stepped even further back, giving him space. "Whatever you are running from, it ends tonight. Not with them, not with me. With me, you survive. Do you understand? Survival." The word rang in her ears like both a promise and a challenge, and she knew he meant it, not just as a casual threat to the wolves or the storm, but as a statement that somehow, impossibly, he had chosen her. He had chosen her, though she hadn't even known she had the right to be chosen. Her chest heaved. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to let herself believe that maybe tonight wouldn't end in pain, in fear, in blood, and in fire. And then he reached out. Just a fraction, a tentative touch near her arm. She tensed instantly. Her muscles coiled like steel. But instead of touching, he stopped, leaving the space between them heavy with unspoken words. The air throbbed with energy, dangerous, raw, alive. "I thought you were the other sister," he repeated, softer this time. Almost a sigh, almost regret. Her breath caught. That single repetition changed something inside her. Not shame, not anger, something else, something unnameable. Recognition. desire, fear, safety, danger, all at once. The wolves shifted behind him, uncertain, hesitant. The storm screamed, wind slicing the trees, rain hammering the mud. But she felt, for the first time since her flight began, the sensation of standing beside someone who might actually be stronger than the storm itself. Someone who might, just might, be strong enough to see her, all of her. And, as her trembling began to slow, as her chest rose and fell against the rhythm of terror and hope, she realized something that made her stomach twist in ways both terrifying and thrilling. Tonight, fate had delivered her into hands she had no right to trust, and yet couldn't resist. The forest waited, silent and expectant. The wolves watched, restrained. The storm roared, relentless. And between them, the tension crackled so loud it could almost be heard above the thunder. "Elara Miles," he whispered again, his voice low, private, intimate, dangerous, yet tethered with something almost human. "Tonight, you are not alone." For a long, shivering moment, she wanted to believe him, and maybe she did. The storm had begun to retreat, though its fury still clung to the forest like a damp, clinging shroud. Rain dripped in heavy beads from broken branches, pooling in the mud around Elora's soaked boots, and the occasional flash of lightning illuminated the pale fear etched across her face. She was trembling, chest heaving, but not from the cold. She could feel it. Lysander's gaze on her, intense and steady, heavy with questions he didn't yet voice. Every instinct screamed at her to flee again, to vanish before he could see too much. And yet, for the first time in years, she didn't move. Her mind, however, was already running, racing backward, unbidden, unwilling. Her past rose like smoke, thick and suffocating, curling into the damp air between them. She remembered standing in the family estate, long before the pack's judgment had defined her, and seeing Seraphina, perfect. Every inch of her sister shimmered with light, beauty, and ease. The way people smiled at Seraphina, deferred to her, adored her. It had always burned Elara in silence. She had been the shadow, the mistake, the one no one expected to succeed. And then, her first shift. She had been just a child, barely 12, playing in the woods behind their home. A sudden surge of rage, frustration, rejection, and impossible. Primal energy she didn't understand had taken her. Her body changed, fur sprouting, claws elongating, eyes burning gold in the sunlight. The shift was violent, uncontrolled, and terrifying. By the time her mother and the pack elders arrived, she had nearly destroyed the clearing. Branches shattered, birds scattered in panic. Her own scream had been swallowed by the roar of her nascent power. The elders had not looked at her with fear alone. They had seen her as a danger, a weapon too wild for control. One word had been whispered and repeated like a curse. Elara is unstable. Elara is forbidden. Elara must hide what she is. And so she had learned. Learned to fold herself into shadows, to disappear in plain sight, to swallow every spark of life that made her different. Her mother's voice echoed in memory, cold and sharp as broken glass. "Hide what you are, Elara, or they will destroy you. No one will protect you, not even your own blood, not even your sister." The words had carved themselves into her soul. She remembered the hollow ache in her chest, the bitter taste of rejection, the way her hands had shaken as she traced the faint glow of the silver flame in secret, the flame that was hers alone, rare, forbidden, dangerous, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. She had loved it, and she had feared it, and every day she feared it would destroy her entirely. Even now, standing in the mud and rain, she felt its pulse beneath her skin, a quiet, insistent reminder that she was still dangerous, that she had not learned to control it fully, that one misstep could burn everything around her. Yet he was here, Lysander, watching her, studying her, and for a brief, impossible moment, she felt the fire within her, silver flame flickering softly beneath her skin, not as a threat, but as a truth, something raw and untamed, yet undeniably hers. She dared to glance at him through the rain. His hair clung to his forehead, plastered and dark, eyes sharp and unreadable. His jaw was tight, expression unreadable, but there was something there, something almost fragile beneath the armor of dominance, vulnerability hidden under power. And she, so used to being ignored, broken, or dismissed, caught herself thinking, "He sees me. He sees all of me." Her hands itched to recoil, to shield herself, to protect the fragile truth of her identity from the judgment of another. But something about him made that impossible. Perhaps it was the way he commanded the storm's attention, the way the forest itself seemed to bend subtly toward him. Perhaps it was the way his gaze held hers, without pressing, without demanding. Or perhaps it was something deeper, a resonance she could not yet name. The flash of memory struck again. Seraphina. The day of the ceremony she had not been invited to. She had waited, hidden in the shadows of the pack grounds, watching as her sister was adorned, celebrated, chosen by Lysander Vale himself. She remembered the heat in her chest that day, the sharp stab of jealousy, the hollow ache of knowing she would never belong. She had been invisible then, unworthy, a ghost standing at the edges of a world that had no place for her. And yet, tonight she was visible, too visible, the silver flame whispering beneath her skin, alive, unrestrained, and him, Lysander, watching her. Not the sister, not the golden, favored one, her, the unwanted, the exiled, the one they had all deemed dangerous. He knelt beside her now, finally, rain dripping from his hair, clinging to the line of his throat, pooling along the hollow of his chest. His hands moved with surprising gentleness, carefully tending to the wound on her arm, the silver light flickering faintly in response to her pulse. She flinched once, then froze, then allowed herself to remain still. The fire of her power stirred at the proximity of his fingers, tentative, curious, almost protective. Her thoughts raced. He's touching me, and he's not afraid. He's not running. He's not rejecting me. He's staying for hours or minutes. She could not tell. Time seemed to stretch. The rain a steady drumming, the thunder a low hum behind her heartbeat. She felt the past pressing against her, the rejection, the isolation, the exile, the constant fear of harming others, but also something else, a fragile, fluttering spark of hope. Perhaps for the first time, she was allowed to imagine that she might survive this night, this storm, this chase. And then, almost casually, almost coldly, almost perfectly calibrated to unsettle her further. He spoke. "Did you know I rejected your sister today?" The words hit her chest like a fist, not because they hurt in the way she expected, but because they unsettled the very core of her, mixing validation and doubt, curiosity and fear, confusion and desire. He had seen her, known her presence, recognized her as someone other than Serafina, the sister she had been measured against her entire life, the one whose shadow had haunted her existence. Her body trembled, her teeth clenched against an internal moan. She wanted to speak, to demand answers, to confess everything in one tremulous, messy outpouring of emotion. But she stayed silent. She had learned, long ago, that words could betray her, that words could wound, could explode, could reveal her power before she was ready. And yet, in the hush of that rain-soaked forest, under the heavy gaze of the billionaire Alpha King, the world had narrowed to a single, searing truth. She was not invisible anymore, and he was not the enemy. Her pulse raced in a rhythm she could not name, the silver flame stirring beneath her skin, tendrils of light brushing along her veins, awakening in response to the unspoken tension, the intimacy, the danger. Her body remembered power. Her mind remembered fear. And somewhere, deep inside, she remembered longing for someone to see her, finally, as she truly was. The forest seemed to exhale with her. Wind rustled the soaked leaves, dripping water onto the mud, onto her arms, onto him. The storm was less violent now, but no less intense. Every raindrop was a reminder of vulnerability. Every flash of lightning illuminated the delicate thread that tethered her to him. Every distant rumble of thunder carried the unspoken warning that this night would not end easily or safely. He did not rush her. He did not demand her trust. He simply stayed, watching, studying, touching nothing but the wound he was tending. And in that stillness, she felt the weight of everything she had ever been pressed against her chest, a mixture of shame, fear, and desire. The silver flame flickered again, and she caught herself holding her breath, waiting for the surge, waiting for the disaster, waiting for everything to go wrong. But instead, nothing broke. Instead, she found herself trembling, not from fear, not entirely, but from something deeper, something unfamiliar and forbidden. The possibility that she was, at last, exactly where she was meant to be. The rain had finally ceased, leaving the forest drenched in silence, save for the distant drip of water from leaves and the soft rumble of thunder fading into memory. The mud clung to her boots. The cold had seeped deep into her bones. And yet, as Lysander guided her through the thick undergrowth, her mind barely registered the chill. Every nerve was alive, alert, trembling under the weight of the unknown. He moved with a certainty that seemed impossible in a world still trembling from chaos. Each step he took was measured, deliberate, and yet somehow gentle, accommodating the fragility that clung to her like a second skin. The forest opened before them, the trees thinning until a clearing appeared, and in the center, a grove. It was unlike anything Alara had ever seen. Ancient stones, tall and jagged, rose from the earth like the ribs of some long-dead beast, carved with runes that glimmered faintly silver, as though the moonlight itself had been captured in their etched lines. Vines of frost, glinting in the dim light, wrapped around the stones, shivering as if alive, and the air hummed with a vibration that felt less like wind and more like the pulse of the earth itself. Ilara stopped, breath catching. The grove seemed to be breathing, exhaling cold and silver into the damp night. She could feel the hair on her arms rise, prickling with something she could neither name nor control. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and mesmerizing all at once. "This place," she whispered, voice barely audible over the soft hum. "It feels alive." Lysander's gaze never left her. Bronze eyes flickered with a light that was part wonder, part warning, part recognition. He stepped closer, the rain-matted hair falling across his forehead, damp strands clinging to his sharp jawline. His bare chest glistened, and she could see every muscle shift as he moved. But it was not his body that made her stomach twist. It was the energy, the pull, the undeniable acknowledgement that she did not fully understand, but that her body, her mind, and her very soul recognized instantly. "When I tried to claim your sister," he began, voice low, steady, almost reverent, "I felt nothing, nothing. Serafina, she is not the one my wolf seeks." Ilara's pulse quickened, sharp and uneven. The words lodged in her chest, unexpected, impossible, and intoxicating all at once. Her stomach knotted. Her knees threatened to buckle. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions, demanded answers, yet her voice caught in her throat. The grove itself seemed to respond, the runes glowing faintly brighter, a soft, silver light pulsing like a heartbeat around her. "But when I touched you," he continued, stepping closer, the air between them thickening, charged. "The stones, they reacted. The wind, it moved toward you. Your presence, it shifted the grove." "Ilara," she swallowed, trying to force words to her lips. But fear, doubt, and disbelief tangled them into silence. "You must have the wrong sister," she whispered, shaking her head. "It can't be me." I'm not," the grove interrupted her. A sudden swirl of wind spiraled around her, tugging at her damp hair, brushing against her soaked clothes, lifting a tendril of silver frost from the vines. It moved as though alive, as though recognizing her. The runes flared brighter, not with heat, but with energy, pulsing in time with the hammering of her heart. She stumbled backward, eyes wide, chest pounding. "You see," Lysander said, his voice both calm and urgent. "My wolf recognizes you. Not her, not the one everyone expects. You are the one with the hidden flame." The words sank into her like a plunge into icy water. Her mind reeled. Hidden flame, recognition, my wolf, every childhood fear, every memory of rejection, every shadow of shame flashed across her mind. She had been the dangerous one, the unwanted one, the one everyone whispered about and avoided. Yet here, in this grove, with him, the world itself seemed to acknowledge that maybe she was exactly the one she was always meant to be. The stones flared again, silver light chasing the shadows of the forest into corners where they dared not linger. A carved mural on one of the tallest stones caught her eye, weathered, ancient, yet unmistakable. It depicted a woman with eyes like silver fire, standing beside a wolf king, fur dark as midnight, eyes aglow with the same molten bronze she now recognized as Lysander's. Their hands brushed, but the energy between them leapt from the stone as though the mural itself remembered a story too old to be forgotten. Alara's legs felt unsteady. She could barely breathe, could barely comprehend the enormity of what she was seeing. I don't understand, she whispered, voice trembling. This is her story, not mine. You must have meant. The wind whipped again, silvery frost spiraling around her, brushing her arms, her hair, her damp shoulders. The runes pulsed brighter. The stones themselves seemed to lean toward her, reverent, demanding attention, alive with energy she had always feared, yet secretly longed for. You don't understand, Lysander said, voice low, reverent, almost intimate, as he stepped closer. Each step carried authority, yet there was a softness in the way he spoke, a care that made her want to flinch and reach out simultaneously. I felt the pull long before I knew what it meant. When I tried to take your sister, nothing happened. When I touch you, everything responds. The stones, the wind, the air itself. It recognizes the flame in you, not her. You. Her heart thundered. The silver flame beneath her skin surged at the acknowledgement, a whisper of heat and light that made her gasp, trembling in a way that was part fear, part exhilaration. She had always been taught to hide it, suppress it, fear it. But here, in this grove, with him, it was not something to conceal. It was proof. Proof that she belonged. Proof that she was not a mistake. The tension between them thickened. She wanted to move closer, to reach out, to let the truth of her power, her existence, her very soul, meet him in that charged space. But the old habits, the fear of hurting, of being too much, too dangerous, made her hesitate. He didn't rush her. He didn't push. He simply stood there, the storm of power surrounding them, bronze eyes locked on hers, studying her as though he could see every secret, every scar, every hidden ember of fire that made her who she was. My wolf, he whispered, voice almost lost to the hum of the grove, recognizes you, not her. And in that simple, devastating declaration, 1,000 years of doubt and fear, shame and isolation seemed to converge and collapse inside her chest. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run, to leap into his arms, to flee. Every instinct warred against every desire. She wanted to vanish from the world and exist solely within the intensity of his gaze, the recognition of her flame, the pulse of destiny that throbbed around her like the heartbeat of the earth itself. She stumbled, the wet earth beneath her giving way, and he caught her, fingers brushing against her waist, grounding her, anchoring her even as her soul felt poised to unravel entirely. She shivered, not from cold, but from the raw, electric intimacy of it, the pull of a destiny she could barely comprehend. The grove reacted again. The runes blazed in response to her racing pulse. Silver frost spiraled in the wind, circling around her, tugging at the edges of her soaked hair, brushing across her shoulders. The energy was alive, vibrant, and yet terrifyingly untamed, just like the silver flame she carried. You belong here, Lysander said softly, almost reverently, his hand lingering at her side. Not your sister, not anyone else. You are the one the prophecy speaks of, the one with the hidden flame, the one who will stand at my side when the world tests us, when it tries to destroy everything we are. Her chest heaved. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel the reverberation in her throat, in her temples, in her trembling hands. She had spent years hiding, fearing, denying, running from a world that would never accept her. And yet, here, in the silence of the grove, amidst the glowing runes and frost-clad stones, she felt seen. The wind wrapped around her again, almost protectively this time, tugging softly at her damp clothing, brushing past her trembling arms. She wanted to flee, to deny it, to insist that it was impossible. And yet, every instinct of her body, every pulse of the silver flame beneath her skin, every shiver of fear and longing within her, whispered a single truth. This is real. This is me. And I cannot deny it. Lysander's eyes softened, bronze fire dimming to molten warmth. And he reached out, not touching, not forcing, but letting her presence command the space between them. Do you understand? He asked, quiet but insistent. Your power, your flame, it was never meant to be hidden. It was always meant to shine. And he stopped, letting the words linger in the charged night air. The silver flame pulsed beneath her skin in answer, and the grove responded with a burst of silver light that made her gasp. She could not speak, could not think, could barely breathe, and yet, in that single, impossibly profound moment, she knew one thing with absolute clarity. The prophecy had chosen her, and the Alpha at her side, her unexpected savior, was as bound to that destiny as she was. The grove had barely returned to stillness when the sound of breaking branches shattered the fragile peace. Torches flickered in the distance as warriors from Lysander's pack emerged, their eyes narrowing, weapons clutched with white-knuckled tension. The wind shifted, carrying the unmistakable scent of suspicion, anger, and fear. They stormed toward the sacred stones with a force that made the very ground tremble. Alara froze, drenched and shivering, clutching her shoulders against the cold, her chest tightening in panic. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but the grove itself seemed to pulse with warning. The battle was already beginning. One of the elder warriors, his face grim, stepped forward, voice booming over the tension of the crowd. This woman, she has deceived you all. Witchcraft, seduction, forbidden power. She is not what she claims. The accusation hit her like a physical blow. Every eye in the grove turned toward her. Her palms tingled, the silver flame flickering faintly beneath her skin, responding to the rush of fear and anger that surged through her. She swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. The forest had been her sanctuary moments ago. Now it felt like a cage of judgment, every shadow conspiring against her. The elders stepped closer, robes rustling, faces etched with disbelief and fear. Their chants began, low and trembling, attempting to draw confirmation of the true Luna, an ancient ritual meant to reveal destiny in its purest form. Flames burst from the sacred stones, and the crowd collectively inhaled. And then the impossible happened. The flames didn't glow gold, as tradition demanded. They burned silver. A gasp swept through the grove, echoing like thunder in Alara's chest. The elders shrieked, pointing, accusing, voices raised in panic. It's a bad omen. This is a sign of corruption, a harbinger of doom. Alara's stomach churned. She wanted to explain, to scream, to tell them that the flame had always belonged to her, that she had always been the one chosen, but the words lodged in her throat, tangled with fear and shame. She could feel the collective judgment pressing in, suffocating her, and the silver flame pulsed violently in response, as if it too recoiled from the spectacle. Lysander stepped forward, voice strong and commanding, cutting through the rising panic. "Enough!" His eyes swept over the crowd, bronze fire flaring with restrained fury. This is not deception. This is the truth. I recognize her. I recognize what she is. And if any of you have the strength to challenge me, then step forward," the council murmured, unsettled. Tradition weighed heavily on them, their loyalty to the pack's history, in conflict with instinct. Lysander's gaze, however, never left Alara's, anchoring her in a storm of chaos, demanding she trust him, even if she could not yet trust herself. Then Seraphina appeared. She stepped into the clearing, golden hair dripping, tears streaking her flawless face, the picture of grief and desperation. "Lysander," she cried, voice trembling, "you must see reason. This is a mistake. She is not the one." The words cut deeper than any blade. Alara's heart thumped violently against her ribs. Seraphina, the sister she had been overshadowed by her whole life, was crying for Lysander to reject her. The sight twisted a knot of anger and pain in her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to protect herself from humiliation, from betrayal, from the world that never ceased to treat her as less than. And then, someone, an elder with eyes like coals, stepped forward, pointing a gnarled finger toward Alara. "Her power!" the elder cried, voice rising over the storm in the crowd. "She has suppressed it. She has hidden it. The silver flame burns in her veins. It is forbidden." The grove seemed to pulse in response. Silver light leapt from the stones, coiling around her wrists, brushing against her shoulders, reflecting in her wide, terrified eyes. The crowd recoiled. Murmurs became shouts. Panic rippled through the grove like wildfire. "Leave!" an elder bellowed, voice booming with authority. "You must leave the territory before dawn, or you will be destroyed." Alara's chest cracked under the weight of it. Every humiliation, every rejection, every moment of being unseen or unwanted, compressed into a single, unbearable heartbeat. She turned toward Lysander, desperate for his defense, for a shield, for a sign that he would stand by her. But he hesitated, torn between instinct and duty, between the whispers of his counsel and the undeniable truth that he recognized her as the one. That pause, momentary yet infinite, was enough. Her heart fractured. She could not bear it. Not this, not the humiliation, not the betrayal of expectation, not the fear of being destroyed by those who had once claimed to protect her. She pivoted, mud splattering as she fled into the shadows, leaving the silver flames behind, leaving the shocked faces of the pack, leaving Lysander's bronze eyes blazing in disbelief. And as she ran, rain slicked her hair to her face. Her palms glowed faintly with suppressed fire, and she swore she would never, ever allow the world to humiliate her again. Hours passed, though Alara could not tell how many. She ran through soaked forests, across slick stones, and over trembling roots, exhausted, trembling, her muscles screaming with fatigue. She finally collapsed at the edge of a river, the water icy against her hands as she sank to her knees. And then, the soft, deliberate sound of footsteps approached. Her breath caught. Panic surged. She turned, prepared to flee once more. But it wasn't a wolf or a pack member. It was him, Lysander, cloaked in shadow, but unmistakably present. Bronze eyes fixed on her with intensity, tempered by concern. Without a word, he removed his cloak and draped it over her shoulders. The warmth seeped into her chilled body, and though she resisted, the gesture spoke louder than any words ever could. He was here. He had not abandoned her. They moved to a small riverside cave, the fire he built crackling to life, throwing shadows across the rock walls, dancing across her pale, trembling face. The flames reflected in her wide eyes, the firelight mingling with the silver glow of the residual flame in her veins. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. He knelt beside her, hands warm as they rested near her trembling ones, yet careful, reverent. "Ilara," he said softly, voice a low murmur that seemed to seep into the marrow of her bones. "You don't have to face this alone." She shook her head, tears slipping freely now, a mixture of fear, frustration, and raw, desperate relief. I think my power kills the people I care about," she admitted, voice barely audible over the fire's crackle and the river's gentle rush. "I don't know if I can control it, or if I can be near anyone without hurting them." Lysander's hand rose slowly, brushing her cheek, gentle, possessive, anchoring. "Ilara, I see you, all of you, every shard of pain, every spark of fire, every hidden part you've tried to bury, and I accept it all." Her breath caught, her chest tightened. The silver flame pulsed faintly in response, a whisper of acknowledgement, a recognition that his acceptance, his understanding, had reached even the core of her power. They leaned closer, and she could feel the heat of his body, the strength of his presence, the intoxicating, dangerous allure of someone who had seen her, recognized her, and yet did not recoil. Their breaths mingled in the space between them, hearts racing, minds spinning with desire and fear, anticipation and caution. Almost, but not quite. Ilara pulled back, trembling, shaking her head. I can't," she whispered, voice broken, but resolute. "I can't want this. I can't want you. Not now. Not like this. I'm too dangerous." Lysander's eyes softened, just enough to betray the man beneath the alpha. Bronze fire tempered by molten warmth. "Then trust me anyway," he murmured. "Trust me to protect you. Trust me to see you, even if you won't let yourself be seen. I'm not asking for anything else. Not yet. Just trust me." Her fingers curled into the fabric of his cloak. The warmth, the proximity, the promise in his voice. She wanted to run, yes, but she wanted to stay too. And for the first time, maybe ever, she allowed herself a fragile, flickering thought. Perhaps, for the first time, she did not have to fight the fire alone. The river whispered beside them. The fire crackled. And in the quiet, drenched shadows of the cave, two souls, torn, scarred, and weary, began to recognize the connection that destiny had drawn between them, one careful heartbeat at a time. And though nothing had been claimed yet, and nothing had been resolved, A seed had been planted, a dangerous, burning, undeniable seed, one that could ignite everything or destroy them both entirely. The forest was a whisper of silver under the moonlight, but the grove, the sacred heart of the pack, throbbed with tension, like a living thing aware of the deceit within its midst. Alara had returned, determined yet wary, her wounds barely healed. Her mind a tangle of fear, longing, and disbelief. The firelight from torches danced on the ancient stones, casting long, accusing shadows, yet nothing compared to the coldness she felt as she stepped forward and saw Seraphina waiting. Her sister's eyes glimmered, not with sorrow, not with fear, but with a practiced, golden veneer of innocence, and beneath it, something darker, sharp as a blade. "Lysander," Seraphina began, voice trembling just enough to draw attention. I need to tell the truth. About her. About Alara." The grove went still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. All eyes turned to Alara, burning her with suspicion, accusation, and curiosity. She attacked me when we were children," Seraphina continued, each word measured, rehearsed. "Everyone knows it. She tried to harm me, to hurt me, and the pack had to intervene. You all protected me. She's dangerous. She's unstable. She has always been unstable." The lie landed with crushing weight. Alara's chest tightened, lungs burning, and the silver flame beneath her skin stirred, quivering in response to the shock, the injustice, the betrayal. Memories she had long buried, the shame, the fear, the exile, tumbled forward, raw and unrelenting. "Lies!" she wanted to scream, voice sharp enough to split the night, but words caught in her throat. The council of elders, faces solemn, eyes hard, nodded in unison. Some murmured, some gasped, some whispered prayers, as if the truth of the world itself had fractured. Lysander stepped forward, jaw tight, eyes searching hers. He hesitated, just a heartbeat, a fraction of a second. But it was enough for her to see the flicker of doubt, the hesitation that shattered the fragile trust she had begun to place in him. The council wasted no time. "The silver flame is a curse," an elder bellowed, voice echoing through the grove. "It brings ruin, destruction, and dishonor to the pack. She must be detained immediately. She is a threat to the ritual, to the pack, to the prophecy itself." Panic rippled through the crowd. Wolves barked and growled, some stepping back, fearful, some stepping forward, fueled by centuries of blind obedience. Every pair of eyes seemed to pierce through her, judging, condemning, branding her a monster. Alara's chest ached with betrayal. Every step she had taken, every risk, every confession of her power, every moment of vulnerability, all had been used against her. Her vision blurred with tears, silver light flickering faintly beneath her skin as her anger, grief, and fear collided. The hesitation in Lysander's stance was the final shard to shatter her heart. He knew the truth. He had seen it. And yet, he had not moved fast enough. He had not stood boldly in her defense. The world had nearly drowned her in lies before he could act. And that was the moment something inside her snapped. The silver flame erupted, just a sliver at first, a shimmer across her skin, illuminating the grove with a cold, ethereal light. Then it roared, her hair lifted in an invisible wind, strands glinting silver, eyes blazing, and the ground beneath her trembled with power that had lain dormant too long. The crowd cried out in shock, awe, and fear. The elders shrieked, stumbling backward, as the very air seemed to thrum with energy. She was no longer small, no longer the unwanted sister hiding in shadows. She was power incarnate, raw and radiant, terrifying and beautiful. The silver fire coursed along her arms, wrapping around her like living ribbons, casting dancing reflections across the ancient stones. But she did not stay, not to fight, not to plead. She could not. The betrayal had cut too deep, the humiliation too sharp. Her heart shattered, and with every beat of her wings aflame, she fled, through the grove, into the darkened forest, the wind carrying her footsteps, and the crackle of silver light. Fear and fury combined to propel her forward, leaving behind the shocked faces, the whispered accusations, the crumbling authority of elders who had once ruled her world. The forest was alive with chaos when she returned. The night had deepened, shadows longer, the air heavy with smoke and burning wood. Word had reached her in whispers carried by the wind. The sacred grove was under attack. A rival faction of wolves, ambitious and cruel, had descended, intent on seizing power while the pack's leadership wavered. Fires licked the stones where silver runes had once hummed with life. Wolves screamed in terror and rage alike, clawing at the flames, fighting for survival, some falling, some scattering in panic. Seraphina's voice rang through the chaos, shrill with fear. And then, suddenly, silence. The crowd erupted in a mix of confusion and horror. She had been taken, abducted by the enemy. The truth of her manipulation became clear. Every tear, every plea, every whisper of loyalty had been a lie. Seraphina had played her role to perfection, while Alara had been cast as the villain, the dangerous flame. But Alara had returned, and she was no longer the frightened, fleeing girl. She walked through the flames as though the fire itself bent to her will. Silver light coiled around her fingers, dancing along her limbs, stabilizing, controlled, beautiful in its terror. Every wolf that had once scorned her, every pack member who had doubted, feared, or judged, witnessed her ascendancy. She saved those who had fought her, who had tried to harm her, who had shunned her. She saved them not out of kindness, but because the power she wielded demanded balance, demanded justice, demanded recognition. And then it happened. The transformation. Her body shifted in ways that were both human and otherworldly. Silver markings traced along her skin like ancient sigils, eyes glowing with the light of queens long past. Her hair lifted as though caught in a wind from another realm, and her aura radiated power that was at once terrifying and mesmerizing. The earth trembled beneath her. Runic stones along the grove ignited in silver fire, ancient voices whispering through the wind. The true Luna rises. The true Luna rises. It was not a declaration. It was a recognition. The ancestors, the spirits, the forces that had always watched, had acknowledged her. She was the one. She moved toward the center of the grove, every step deliberate, controlled, radiating power. The air itself shimmered around her. Wolves fell silent in awe and fear. Flames danced, not to consume, but to follow her will. At the heart of the chaos, she confronted the true villain, an elder robed in shadow, face twisted with envy and fear. who had sought to manipulate the prophecy, to extinguish the power she carried, to shape destiny, to suit his own ambitions. His eyes widened when he recognized her transformation. "No, this cannot be," he whispered, voice trembling as the ground beneath him shuddered. Elara's voice rang out, clear, authoritative, and resolute. "I am not your sacrifice. I am not your pawn. I am not the mistake you feared." Silver fire surged along her arms, coiling toward him, illuminating the grove in blinding light. The wind howled, carrying the voices of ancestors, the murmurs of the earth, the prophecy fulfilled in the presence of their true Luna. He lunged, desperate, but the silver flame moved with her, deflecting, repelling, demonstrating not just destruction, but control, mastery, and power tempered by purpose. Every movement she made was grace and fury intertwined. Every step was command and defiance. And then the world reacted. Earth tremors ran through the grove, cracking stones, dislodging roots, igniting the air with energy that seemed almost sentient. Runic markings glowed along every surface, and whispers of the past swept through the night, a chorus of approval, of recognition, of destiny finally fulfilled. The elder crumbled before her, not entirely destroyed, but utterly undone, powerless before the force she had become. And as the flames around her receded, controlled now, disciplined, beautiful, she stood in the center of the grove, heart still pounding, chest still heaving, yet unbroken. She had claimed her power. She had claimed her destiny. And in that moment, Lysander appeared at her side, bronze eyes reflecting the silver glow, voice low but unwavering. "You are everything, and I am yours." For the first time, Elara did not flinch. She did not hide. She did not run. She was the Luna the prophecy had always spoken of, the flame untamed yet disciplined, the sister, the woman, the alpha, the survivor, the one who would no longer bow to fear or expectation. The night held its breath, acknowledging her rise. The world had shifted. The prophecy had awakened. And Elara, finally, completely, had claimed her rightful place. The grove had fallen silent. Smoke from the burned edges of ancient stones mingled with the fog rising from the wet earth. Wolves, some trembling, some staring with awe, some hiding in the shadows, watched as Elara stood at the center, her chest heaving, silver fire coiling faintly around her wrists. The glow from her eyes mirrored the ancestral flames dancing across the runes, light reflecting off Lysander's bronze gaze as he remained steadfastly at her side. But the stillness was not peace. It was the calm before the world decided how it would respond. Elara felt it in her bones, the weight of the pack's judgment, the uncertainty of allies, the lingering fear of enemies who might yet strike. Her breath came ragged, sharp, carrying the scent of smoke and rain, the metallic tang of possibility, danger, and the unknown. Would they accept her now? Could they see beyond the flames to the woman, the sister, the survivor she had fought to become? Or would fear, ancient, instinctive, unyielding, push them to rise against her? She looked at Lysander. His eyes were steady, unwavering, filled with recognition, desire, and something softer, reverence. And yet, even his strength could not shield her from the reality pressing in from every side. The world expected her to fail, expected her to falter, expected her to bend and vanish into shadows once more. Her pulse thrummed, a drumbeat of both defiance and exhaustion. She had claimed her power. She had survived betrayal, humiliation, and attack. She had embraced the prophecy, stepped into the silver flame, and yet she could feel it. The pull of destiny was far from over. It was only beginning. Would you have feared her too? The wind seemed to whisper, echoing in the hollow spaces between broken stone and scorched earth. Would you have turned away, like so many have in the past? Her gaze swept across the pack. Wolves who had once hissed at her approach, elders who had denounced her, Seraphina's shadowy absence, all of it converged into a single, piercing question. How much courage did it take to stand with someone the world feared? And then the wind shifted, carrying another, more personal inquiry. Or would you have chosen her, even when the world didn't? Alara's breath caught. The question was not for the pack, not for Lysander. It was for the world, and for each listener, each soul bearing witness. It was a test, a challenge, and the answer was not simple. Choosing her meant standing against centuries of fear, tradition, and expectation. Choosing her meant believing in her when the world would not. Choosing her meant stepping into fire and refusing to blink. She let the silver flame pulse faintly, as though inviting those watching to see the truth. Power was not always destruction. Love was not always soft, and destiny was not always gentle. Sometimes, the ones the world feared were the very ones who would save it. And then, in a voice both fragile and unyielding, as if whispering to every heart listening, the question became almost tangible. Who would you have chosen? The grove seemed to hold its breath, waiting for an answer. The smoke curled, the runes glimmered faintly, and even the moon seemed to hang, suspended in the sky, waiting. If her fire lit something inside you, subscribe to Velvet Romance Library. Because here, we tell tales that burn, tales that reach into the dark corners of the heart, that pull you into worlds of danger, desire, and destiny. Subscribe and step closer into the stories that refuse to let you go. The words lingered, wrapping around the audience like the last warmth of a fading fire. Yet the grove and the world did not stay silent for long. The night carried a subtle tremor beneath the earth, the quiet whisper of fate, reminding all who watched that the story was far from complete. Alara and Lysander stood amidst the ruins of the grove. Silver fire lingered along her arms, smoke curling around the edges of the stones, and the river reflected their forms, fragmented by ripples, as if the world itself could not fully comprehend the transformation it had just witnessed. The air hummed with a low vibration, a pulse that matched the rhythm of her heart, steady now, strong, unbroken, and yet the tremor underfoot was not gone. The ground shifted subtly, almost imperceptibly at first, then in deeper, rolling waves that carried a foreboding weight. Silver dust rose from the earth, catching the dim light and swirling around Alara's hair. The ancient stones shivered, runes flickering as if warning of a presence unseen. A shadowed figure emerged from the edges of the grove, half hidden by smoke and mist, voice as soft as silk, yet cutting like glass. She is not the only one. The true Alpha hasn't risen yet. The words struck like ice against steel. Alara's pulse raced again, silver flames flickering faintly in response. A warning, a promise, a whisper of the battles to come. Lysander's hand instinctively found hers, grounding her, steadying her, offering the first touch of safety since the betrayal that had tried to break her. She met his gaze. Bronze fire, reflecting silver light, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed to pause. They were bound, not just by destiny, but by choice, by fire, by everything that had been burned away and yet remained, stronger, fiercer, unbroken. The shadow receded into the mist, leaving only the tremor in the earth and the echo of prophecy hanging in the air. Alara could feel it, deep in her bones, the recognition that what had just begun would test her in ways she could not yet imagine. The crescent moon loomed above, silver and cold, a sentinel over the grove, its pale light reflected in her glowing eyes, glimmering across her silver markings, across the firelight, across the ruins of what had been and the promise of what was yet to come. Every leaf, every stone, every pulse of wind seemed to murmur a single truth. The story was far from over, and Alara, Luna, flame-bearer, survivor, queen, was only beginning to step fully into her power. And as the night deepened, the last words drifted on the wind, soft yet insistent, meant for every listener, every witness to the tale. She is rising, she is fire, and the world will never be the same again. The wind carried the echo through the forest, through the ruins, through hearts waiting for courage and destiny. The silver flame pulsed one last time before fading to a subtle, eternal glow, promising that the trials, the love, the betrayals, and the destiny were far from over. For now, only one certainty remained. Alara had claimed her power. She had survived betrayal. She had embraced the prophecy. And yet, somewhere beyond the shadows, a greater challenge awaited. The test that would shape the Alpha, the Luna, and the very future of the pack.